In a quiet village nestled between golden fields and the hush of distant hills, lived a revered scholar named Acharya Tripathi. His name was spoken with awe by kings and peasants alike, known not only for his vast intellect, but also his unshakable principles. The Acharya had spent his life immersed in sacred texts, crafting volumes of deep knowledge and timeless truth. His days began with prayer and ended with ink-stained fingers. He lived not for the world, but for the wisdom he hoped to leave behind. Acharya had a wife, Sushila, a woman of gentle spirit and silent strength, and a son named Arpan, the only light of their modest home. But while the Acharya nourished the world with words, he neglected the one soul who most needed his guidance. Sushila watched Arpan grow like an untended tree, strong but unruly. "He needs you," she would often say, her voice a whisper lost among rustling manuscripts. "Your words fill the world, but not our son's heart." Acharya would shake his head. "I have no time for childish emotion. The world needs my work. My son will understand one day." But Arpan didn't understand. With each passing day, he slipped further into mischief, fueled by boredom and the craving for a father's attention. He skipped lessons at the Gurukul, traded books for dice, and wandered with boys who spoke not of ideas, but of easy thrills. Sushila tried to rein him in with love and warnings, but she was one woman, and the world outside was loud. It was not long before Arpan found himself in real trouble. One moonless night, he followed two of his reckless companions to the village temple. "There's gold hidden behind the sanctum," one of them whispered. "Enough to feast for a year." Arpan hesitated, but pride and hunger for thrill pulled him in. But fate does not always wait for grand moments to strike. It creeps silently, often when one least expects it. The boys hadn't even pried open the offering box when a temple guard caught them red-handed. Arpan froze as cold fingers gripped his arm. Panic clawed at his chest as he was dragged through dirt-stained streets, past the very houses that had once praised his father. The temple guard bowed before the king, a stern man of justice and restraint. "Maharaj," he said grimly, "these boys were caught stealing from the temple. One of them is Arpan, the son of Acharya Tripathi." The court gasped. The Acharya's name carried weight, a name that stood for truth, for moral integrity. And now it was tainted. The king's brow furrowed. "Send word to the Acharya. Let him come explain how the tree of wisdom bore such a rotten fruit." When the messenger reached the scholar's home, Sushila dropped the vessel in her hand. Terracotta shattered on stone. Acharya paused mid-sentence, quill in the air, eyes narrowing. "Say that again," he whispered. "Your son, Arpan, he was caught stealing, my lord. The king demands your presence." For the first time in years, the Acharya stood silent, his breath caught between disbelief and shame. "My life's work, my honor," he murmured. Sushila, eyes brimming with fear and fury, said, "If you do not go, I swear I will not live to see another dawn." Acharya looked at her, his resolve crumbling. "You would force me to plead for a thief? He is your son," she cried. "And perhaps this is the only chance to save what little is left." With great reluctance, Acharya Tripathi wrapped his shawl around his shoulders and walked into the king's court, not as a sage, but as a father burdened with disgrace. The king looked down at him. "Your son is a criminal, but he is still a child. I will forgive him, on one condition." The Acharya raised his eyes, voice barely a whisper. "What must I do, Rajan?" "Apologize. Here, in front of my court. Bow your head, not as a teacher, but as a man who failed his home." Gasps filled the hall. But Acharya, with a heart heavy as stone, closed his eyes and said, "So be it. For my son's life, I will carry this shame." He bowed. The king nodded. "The boy is free, but the weight of this act, it is yours to bear." And so began the unraveling of a legacy, one not marked by the absence of wisdom, but by the absence of love. Despite the king's pardon, the court never forgot the bowed head of Acharya Tripathi. Where once people lowered their eyes in reverence, now they whispered behind folded palms, pointing at him on the street. There goes the scholar whose son robbed the gods. No one remembered the scriptures he had written, the sermons that once moved hearts. They only remembered the shame. Arpan returned home that day, his feet dragging through dust, face untouched by remorse. The boy didn't seem to grasp the weight of his father's humiliation. Instead, he slumped onto a cot and muttered, "At least I'm free." But freedom, without wisdom, is simply another prison. In the weeks that followed, Acharya Tripathi's health began to wither. Once a man of upright posture and piercing gaze, he now shuffled quietly through the house like a shadow. The respect he had spent a lifetime earning had vanished, and with it, the strength of his spirit. Illness crept into his bones, fed by humiliation, and bloomed like a poisonous flower. Still, he tried to write. He would sit with trembling hands, working on one last manuscript, a sacred book he believed might outlive his disgrace. "Let me finish this," he would whisper. "Then I can leave this world in peace." Sushila wept silently in corners of the house. She watched her husband fade and her son sink deeper into a world of waste. Arpan, untethered and ungrateful, sold things from the house to fund his vices. First trinkets, then clothes, then one day, books. That day, Acharya noticed something missing from the shelf. His eyes narrowed. "Where is my Vidyadhara Grantha?" he asked. Arpan shrugged. "I sold it." "You what?" the Acharya said, his voice shaking. "I thought it was just old paper. Worthless. I needed food." Acharya's eyes welled up, not from anger, but grief. "Worthless? You've sold the only treasure this house had left." Arpan scoffed. "You only ever cared about your books. Never about me." The old man didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Days turned to weeks. The illness tightened its grip. His wife barely managed to feed them. Arpan no longer cared to even pretend he was seeking work. One evening, the Acharya called his son to his side. His breath was shallow, but his voice steady. "Arpan," he said, placing a worn bundle of paper in his hands. "This is my final work. I wrote it for the world, but now I give it to you. Not because you earned it, but because I failed you. Maybe this will succeed where I could not." Arpan looked at the bundle, uninterested. "What do you expect me to do with this? I can't even read." "Then learn," the Acharya whispered. "Even now, it is not too late." By morning, Acharya Tripathi was gone. His funeral was quiet. No one came. The fire that consumed his body did so in silence, as if ashamed to speak of him. Afterward, Sushila clung to life, but barely. Hunger and despair wore her down. Arpan watched her shrink into silence. One day, as her voice faded, she said, "If you can't feed me, at least feed yourself, Arpan. I am tired, so tired." Then, she too was gone, left alone in a house that was now just for cracked walls and memories. Arpan opened the old manuscript. The pages felt heavier than gold, even though he still couldn't understand them. Out of curiosity, or perhaps desperation, he walked to the home of an elderly neighbor, Ramu Kaka, known to be literate. "Can you tell me what this says?" Arpan asked. Ramu adjusted his glasses and flipped through the manuscript. His brows furrowed. "These are complex Sanskrit shlokas. I'm afraid I can't interpret them. Only a great scholar could." Arpan walked back, the weight of the book pressing into his chest like a question he couldn't answer. Days passed. Food vanished. So did the kindness of neighbors. No one would hire a thief's son, no matter how hungry he looked. Arpan roamed the village begging for help, but people turned away. Then one morning, driven by starvation, he wandered into the edge of a royal orchard. Fruit hung low from heavy branches, and the smell of ripening sweetness made his stomach twist. He picked a few and began to eat, unaware he was being watched. The royal guard descended upon him before he could even swallow. "Thief!" they shouted, dragging him away. Arpan didn't fight. He was too weak. He was brought again before the king, the same monarch who had pardoned him once. "You again?" the king roared. "You've learned nothing. Had you not been the son of Acharya Tripathi, I would have had you whipped." Arpan collapsed to his knees. "I was starving." The king's face hardened. "You are banished. Leave this kingdom, and do not return. Staggering home, Arpan found the door to his house ajar. Inside, nothing but emptiness waited for him, and his mother's cold body, lifeless, curled in a corner. Hunger had claimed her. With trembling hands, Arpan performed the rites himself. No one came. No priest. No neighbor. Just him, the wind, and the silence of regret. As he lit the final flame, he whispered, "I've lost everything, and I have no one to blame but myself." Clutching his father's manuscript, the only thing left, he walked away from the ashes and into the forest beyond the village. For the first time, he didn't run from pain. He carried it with him. The forest welcomed Arpan with quiet indifference. Towering trees, sunlit through a canopy of green, whispered to each other in a language he could not understand. For days, he wandered aimlessly. No destination, no food, no plan. Only the aching emptiness inside him and the dusty manuscript tied tightly to his chest. When hunger gnawed and his body trembled with exhaustion, he slumped beneath a large banyan tree, its roots like arms wrapping around him. He opened the manuscript, flipping through the pages again, not out of hope, but habit. The markings on the page were still foreign. His father's handwriting, elegant, flowing, looked like art from another world. "What did you want me to see in this, Father?" he muttered. "You left me nothing but words I can't read." As if in answer, the wind stirred. A sudden gust blew through the forest, and several pages of the manuscript tore free, fluttering into the air. Arpan scrambled to catch them, stumbling through fallen leaves and roots. He managed to save only one. The rest vanished into the woods. He collapsed again, defeated. The remaining page crumpled in his hand. "What am I doing?" he whispered. "What's the point of any of this?" That night, he slept on the cold earth, the stars hidden behind clouds. Miles away, fate began to stir. In another part of the forest, the crown prince Yans, son of King Rudra Pratap, was out hunting. A young man of noble bearing but restless spirit, he had ignored his father's warnings about harming innocent life for sport. Tracking a deer through the trees, he stumbled upon something strange, a scrap of paper floating on the breeze. Curious, he caught it midair. He glanced at the page. Though he could not read Sanskrit, the calligraphy drew him in. The delicate script and precise brushwork suggested great care and meaning. "This looks sacred," he murmured, slipping the page into his pouch. He continued his hunt, following the deer deeper into the woods until it vanished near an old, abandoned temple. There, voices rose from inside. He crept closer. A group of forest dwellers had gathered. At the center stood a wild-eyed priest, chanting under his breath. "To appease the goddess," he declared, "we must offer a young man as sacrifice." The others nodded solemnly, until they noticed Yans watching from behind a pillar. "There," one of them cried. "The gods have sent the offering." Before he could react, they seized him. "Wait," Yans protested. I am no one. Just a traveler. My life means nothing." They tied him to a wooden post. The priest approached with a blade. Yans tried one last plea. "If I must die, grant me a final wish. In my pouch is a parchment. Can anyone here read it aloud before I go?" The priest, curious, took the page and examined it. His brows furrowed. He read, "One lie breeds 1,000 more, and the liar, in the end, is devoured by his own web. To take a life is easy. To give one, that is divine." The words struck the crowd like thunder. Yans lowered his head. "These shlokas, they speak of me. I lied to my father. I came here to kill, and now I face death. Perhaps I deserve it." But the villagers fell silent. One among them stepped forward. "These are not the words of a criminal. They are the words of truth. Perhaps the gods sent this man not for sacrifice, but for salvation." The priest, trembling, dropped the blade. "We were wrong. No more blood will be spilled in the name of the goddess. Let this boy go." The ropes fell. Yans gasped, rubbing his wrists, tears in his eyes. "You've saved me, Father. If only I could show you the power of this truth." He took the shloka and returned to the palace, shaken and humbled. Meanwhile, Arpan awoke with the light of dawn touching his face. His stomach growled, but something inside him had changed. He was no longer running. He was listening, finally listening. In the following days, he traveled from village to village, trying to find work. Doors still closed on him. People still whispered, "Thief." He wore his father's manuscript like armor against shame. But now he endured. One morning, weak with hunger, he came upon a royal city, Rudra Pratap's kingdom. As he passed the palace gates, the smell of warm bread from the royal kitchen struck him like a blow. His feet moved on their own, drawn to the aroma, desperate. Inside, he begged a cook for scraps. "Please," he whispered, "just a piece." The cook scoffed. "You again? Beggars like you don't belong here." Desperate, Arpan snatched a few pieces of bread when the cook turned. But he was caught, dragged through the halls, and thrown before the king once more. "Maharaj," the cook shouted. "He tried to steal food from your kitchen." The king frowned. "Turn out his bag." A soldier stepped forward, yanked Arpan's satchel, and upended it. Bread tumbled out, along with the sacred manuscript. A silence fell across the court. The crown prince, Jans, who had just entered, stepped forward in astonishment. His eyes locked on the manuscript. "This," he whispered, lifting the bundle. "This is it. The source of the shloka that saved my life." He turned to Arpan. "Where did you get this?" Arpan, stunned, could barely answer. It was my father's." "Who was your father?" "Acharya Tripathi." A breathless hush fell. The prince smiled. "You may have been lost, friend, but you carry something priceless." The court of King Rudra Pratap stood still. Even the rustle of silk robes and whisper of torches seemed to fade as Prince Jans held the manuscript high. There was reverence in his voice, almost awe. "This," he said softly, "is the source of the shloka that saved my life in the forest temple." He turned to Arpan, who stood trembling before him, dust-covered, eyes hollow, hands calloused from months of wandering. "You said this was your father's. What was his name again?" "Acharya. Acharya Tripathi," Arpan stammered. His voice cracked under the weight of shame and disbelief. The king sat up straighter. "Tripathi? The Acharya who turned down my offers to serve in the royal court? The one who chose integrity over privilege?" Jans nodded. "The same. And this," he lifted the sacred manuscript again, "is a treasure beyond measure." The king's expression softened as he looked at the worn boy before him. "You carry the last wisdom of a man who taught truth to a generation, even if the world forgot. And yet, you stole bread from my kitchen." Arpan dropped to his knees. "I had nothing, Maharaj. No home, no family. I did not know the value of what I held. I only know now. I wasted everything my father gave me." Prince Jans stepped forward and raised him gently. "No, Arpan. You've carried this manuscript through shame, hunger, and exile. Many would have abandoned it long ago, but something in you refused to let it go. That matters." Then, Jans turned to his father. "Maharaj, I offer 5,000 gold coins for this manuscript, not as a prince, but as a student who was saved by its truth." Gasps echoed across the court. Arpan's mouth fell open. 5,000, he whispered. "For this?" "Yes," said Jans. "For words that carry light in dark places. And because your father's wisdom should live on, not rot in shadows." The young man's legs gave way, and he sat on the palace floor dazed. "I thought I was dying with a worthless bundle. I begged for bread while carrying a fortune." Jans smiled. "That's what ignorance does, Arpan. It blinds us to the treasures we already possess." Tears filled Arpan's eyes. "My father tried to save me, and I only understood after he was gone." The king, deeply moved, stepped down from his throne. "What will you do with this wealth, son of Tripathi?" Arpan looked at the gold offered to him. His father's words now returned as coin. But he didn't smile. "I won't carry this wealth like another burden," he said quietly. "I'll use it to break the chains that held me for so long. I will build a pathshala, a school, for poor children like me, who never had the chance to learn." He held up the manuscript, cradling it like a sacred flame. No child should grow up hating the very wisdom that could save them. No child should call his father's knowledge worthless. The court erupted in murmurs of admiration. The king raised a hand. "Then it is settled. The royal treasury will match your donation. Your school will be built at the edge of the royal city, and it shall be named Tripathi Vidya Mandir. A new chapter began that day. With the help of the prince and the kingdom's scholars, Arpan slowly learned to read. Each syllable unlocked pieces of his father's heart, buried in the sacred text he once scorned. His days were filled with study, and his nights with quiet reflection. He no longer ran from his past. He embraced it. Within a year, the school opened its doors. Arpan stood at the gates, not as a beggar or a thief, but as a teacher. The first students were orphaned boys and girls, barefoot and hungry, eyes bright with hope. He welcomed them in with a smile and said, "I once carried this knowledge without understanding its worth. But today, we begin again, together." Years later, Arpan would often walk the quiet halls of the school, his father's manuscript displayed in a glass case near the entrance. Children would point at it and ask, "Who wrote that, sir?" And he would reply, with pride and sorrow mingled, "A man who was too wise to waste time on praise. But his silence taught me more than 1,000 voices ever could." Moral of the story: when ignorance rules the heart, even gold seems like dust. But the light of knowledge, no matter how delayed, has the power to redeem even the most broken path. It is never too late to change, never too late to learn, never too late to rise.